mind bend, non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness for mind bend creative.
All right, I want to cover a few of the things that you have listed on your website because I want to make sure that I don't forget to touch on some of the things that I was initially inspired to reach out about. So you are a hypnotherapist, board certified, specializing in hypnosis and pain management, past life regression specialist, smoking cessation specialist, healing the child within. Anything you want to add to that list?
Well, yeah, no, that sounds great.
That's on your side. So the thing that I was saying to you was the premise of the show started off with a psychedelic umbrella, right? So that traditionally meant, interviewing people who were working with the classical psychedelics like LSD, psilocybin, ayahuasca, whatever seemed to make sense. And then for this show, I wanted to expand into non-ordinary and extraordinary states of consciousness, not just induced by a classical psychedelic experience, but what does psychedelic mean? What does mind manifesting mean? How do we relate to our minds? How can the mind be a tool in service of a life well lived? How does healing occur? What is inspiration? Where does creativity come from? So, and the hope is always that somebody watching or listening to this show can find something inspiring and to be of benefit for themselves, right? So it's clear from your website, which is All Is Mind Hypnotherapy, that this is a calling for you. This is something that you're fully embodied by this experience. It's all drive, and you're very passionate about it. So I'm excited to dig into as much as we can cover in about an hour today.
Yeah.
But the thing that stuck out to me the most was past life regression specialist, because that sounds magical, and the reason why it sounds magical to me is because it would indicate that we live multiple lifetimes, which to me is a trip in itself and an acknowledgement that carries a lot of weight to it, right? So let me guide you to start with that particular topic, if you would. Yeah, let's start there. Past life regressive hypnotherapy.
Yeah, past life regression. I mean, with any of my clients, I meet them where they're at. So, if a client comes to me and they're interested in that, we do that. I never force that upon anyone. But, it is my own personal belief that we do hold multiple lives, different timelines happening simultaneously. In regards to hypnotherapy, though, with past life regression, ultimately, we're connecting to different ways we pick up patterns and different ways we understand things. And so a lot of the emotional experiences that we have, oftentimes a client will, maybe they've gone to the doctor, they've gone to a therapist, they've gone, they've done years or so much time of therapy or trying to figure out, okay, where's the root of the problem? And they can't quite seem to find it. Or if they get an answer, it's not exactly what they're looking for spiritually or philosophically. And so they want something deeper. And that yearning, that curiosity ultimately leads to an open door for many people. So when we're doing that process, you're opening up the gates to a wide range of things. Many things can come through physiological experiences during hypnosis. A lot of clients, they will remember, because that's part of the suggestion, right? During a session, that you will remember this when you come out for healing. Set that tone in the beginning of it, so that when they come out of it, it's not just kind of, oh, what happened? Was that a dream? But yeah, it's a very, very effective form of therapy. It's beautiful. I love it. I myself have experienced some self-induced through hypnotic techniques for past life regression. So I can only speak to my own experiences, right? But those have been profound, and they have helped me heal a lot of core wounds of the heart. They have helped me understand how, and here's the thing, I tell people, whether you believe in past lives or not, if you have a dream, or if you watch a movie that's thought-provoking, and it just leads you into that space of, could that be real? Is that possible? Now you've added another element to your toolbox of healing that might not have been there before. So it just allows people to expand their mind. But oftentimes people that come already have that belief system.
Are you seeing people who have been through therapy usually first and foremost? Are people coming to you after they've tried other modalities? They're trying to accomplish something in terms of like relieving sadness or transcending through loss or contemplating. They have a goal in mind and they've tried traditional modalities or more traditional, more accessible modalities or not as specialized modalities. And then they come to you. Like you kind of alluded to that, but this might be like an extra level of attention.
Well, and yes, exactly. And I think that is the case because hypnotherapy is still very niche, and people discover it after trial and error, and something just doesn't quite align maybe in the traditional medical system or what have you. So they think deeper, spirituality or philosophy, and so that's what leads them possibly to that realm of things. But, I see individual clients, and I currently work at a treatment center as well. So working with those clients, they're in therapy constantly and overcoming, drugs and alcohol addiction. So I'm part of a team assisting them to get through that habitual pattern of identifying as an addict or identifying as a person of a lost cause, right? Changing that identity spectrum through hypnosis has been a powerful thing. Yeah.
How were you led to this field? How were you led to this vocation, this calling, this career? What were you 6 and decided you wanted to be a hypnotherapist, or was it after something substantial? How did study and interest lead you to where you're at now?
Well, when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor. That quickly changed. But I've always been interested in psychology, always been a very spiritual-minded person. Got that from my mama. But as I grew, went to college at University of San Francisco, and things just weren't lining up for me at the time. And so I ultimately was just in my books and reading and studying different aspects of ancient philosophies, arcane philosophies, occult philosophies, Hermeticism, the list goes on. And so as I started studying, I started to understand, the ancients have had various ways of connecting to a deeper realm of our existence. And so I was curious about that and trying to find a way to make that more accessible for more people. I didn't know what that answer was. Then I'm driving on the 101, see the sign HMI College of Hypnotherapy, and so I applied to that school. That was where I got my initial core training, which was beautiful, pre-COVID, in person, very thorough, beautiful instructors that are very passionate about what they do.
It made sense for you right away. It just landed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the road that led. And then I've just constantly just kept studying and learning more things.
So this is an interesting parallel for me, and one that I think is at the core of having you on the show today. I think for some people, a psychedelic compound, a compound that evokes a psychedelic experience as we sort of commonly understand it to be, can be a tool for getting to that place of deeper recognition or limitless understanding, right? Or optimal potential, seeing things without the noise or the viscerality of our usual waking life, how we have to contend with it to survive, right? So when you think about the term psychedelic, what does that mean to you?
Well, when I think of that term, ultimately, very similar to what you said, I think about a way to expand my mind other than the normal waking days, but with the added agent, so there's a intelligence with whatever plant, with whatever chemical that you're ingesting, and that intelligence mixes with your own. And so I personally feel when I hear psychedelic, it's a partnership, it's a communication that your psyche and everything that you've gone through in your life and possibly previous lives, right, is interacting with this new agent, and they're trying to talk, and that's what you're experiencing. In terms of, manifestation, that's a lot of times what people will come to for hypnosis, and
can you clarify that for me? Like they come to manifest something that they're...
Something that they want, something, I want to lose weight, or I want to, make my daughter proud, and I want to feel more confident. I want, there's a desire there. There's my private clients, I'll say that. And so that desire to manifest something, I always tell them, you're never starting from a 0 point. Everything that we could possibly ever want or desire, even if it's a child, technically maybe it's not there yet tangibly, but the elements to create that essence is here. It's everywhere around us. So we're never starting from 0. And with manifestation, we're learning how to kind of become more and more aware of subtle shifts and changes in our reality. And that's that heightened sense of intelligence that we tap into to then utilize hypnosis as a tool to access deeper realms. But ultimately, if we just think about a child learning the foundations of life, just a baby waking up, closing their eyes, open their eyes, close their eyes, open their eyes. Let's just see every time they see their mother. Well, immediately, I trust I'm going to see this person again. And if that emotional bond is positive, then there's a positive association with the foundation of life. And then there's a positive association with trusting that when I close my eyes and I wake back up, I'll return here, here. And so all those are like the core foundations of creating any belief system. And it starts from a baby. And that's the unconscious mind is picking up feedback, right, from the world all the time. And that feedback gets interpreted, and we recognize unconsciously patterns. And in terms of, a lot of people will use psychedelics, right, to expand their consciousness and to open up that sense of awareness. And that's one way to do it. There's other ways of doing it. There's meditation. There's, various ways of breath work, right? These are the things that I teach my clients in treatment. So there's other ways of doing it. But, when we're trying to expand our awareness, we're ultimately trying to be more efficient with picking up on subtle shifts. Because when we notice when things are changing, then that recognition itself becomes a new pattern. Oh, I'm noticing something's changing. Is something else changing? Is something else changing? And then we feel like that momentum of manifestation is moving, and we get excited. And now there's an emotional attachment to it, and that's a new intelligence added upon that pattern. But the unconscious speaks through kind of these emotional spikes, pattern recognition, and archetypes, symbols, right? The mother, right? We don't know it yet, but that's digested by the child as, foundation of life. Trust. Recognize I can see this person each and every single day, and they feed me. They give me food. I feel safe or not. And all these are beliefs that we're holding. And so in terms of hypnosis, though, it's a skill set to ultimately learn to associate with new things, create new loops, new patterns, so that we are able to move forward and feel confident and brilliant and bright about what we are being attracted to in that recognition. Because as we expand our awareness, because hypnosis is not all upon the practitioner. We're teaching the client to open up. And it's a schooling, an education of how do you live your day-to-day life, and understanding what are the ways that are more unconscious and what are the ways that we're living our lives that are more conscious.
New neural pathways. Thank you so much. New neural pathways is a term that I hear a lot in conversations around psychedelic medicine, creating new neural pathways, whether they're working on particular receptors in our neurology, or whether it's part of a more emotional or spiritual experience. But you're essentially talking about that, right? You're talking about repatterning, or working with the default mode network to deactivate some deeply entrenched modes of thinking and sort of open new windows for opportunity. I'm guessing that the person undergoing hypnotherapy enters a state of suggestibility, which could be analogous to the suggestibility that's encountered upon a traditional psychedelic experience.
Right, exactly. And I will just say just one slight correction. Rather than thinking about entering that state of suggestibility, right? We're always suggestible all the time. It's more so learning. I try my best to teach my clients how to learn how they learn. Learn how they're picking up on information on the daily. You know, are you more auditory learner, tactile, what have you? But yes, when we're in that state of hypnosis, the suggestibility is then expanded because the awareness is expanding. They're able to notice subtle shifts. Oh, my heartbeat's beating faster. Oh, you know, all these things, breathing and breath work. So that becomes part of it.
It's relaxation.
Yes, a lot of it is, but it's also correspondence, right? So let's just say you're taking in an inhale. That's an active breath, right? That you're inhaling. And so so then if the hypnotist then suggests, right, that the client corresponds that active breath with confidence or strength, now it's just an idea, just a suggestion, but then the client is like, oh, well, that doesn't hurt me to consider that idea. So, well, you know, it bypasses any critical thought of, could this harm me? You know, is this safe? So sure, consider that active breath as confidence, as strength, right? And then we keep building upon those associations and then creating new loops, new ways of the unconscious, because I kind of think about it like a spiral, a momentum. Everything that we experience in the world, it wants to grow. We want, even unfortunately, right? Even if that's fear or something like this, if we notice a pattern, someone experienced a deep trauma, something like that, something in their future, right? Reminds them of that previous trauma, so it gets triggered again. And so these patterns repeat, but it's almost as though it wants to find new ways of experiencing itself in different time frames and different ways of corresponding to it, different friendship circles, different family members, right? Just kind of repeating that energy. So a lot of times you're noticing, as the hypnotist, right, I'm noticing patterns of thought and the energy behind any sort of response to it, right? Was that energy progressive, or was it more reluctant? And trying to find a corresponding match to soothe any dissonance there unconsciously. But yeah, hope I'm making sense.
Yeah. Well, you know, to me, and speaking with you now, and just you know, intuiting from what I learned about you before coming on the show. It's a very artful process. It feels like an art for you. There's definitely an artistry involved, and it's as if you're a painter or a designer, helping lay out the avenues of possibility for each respective client, you know, based on where they're coming from, what their goals are, and what you're intuiting, and what you've learned over time. It's very beautiful. Could you walk us through a little bit? I'm not going to try to scam a free session today, but could you walk us through what, you know, somebody comes to your office, oh gosh, I don't even know what they'd be focusing on, but it's been suggested to them that maybe they would benefit from seeing a hypnotherapist. Okay. Maybe they had trauma or particular traumas, or let's say an abusive childhood, maybe with a predatory parent or family member, right? And that is weighing you down and darkening your experience and making it hard to find happiness or progress in relationships, whatever. So they're going to reach out to try something they've never tried before. Could you kind of walk us through what that intake is like for that client, and how you set them up to benefit from what you're going to do with them?
Yeah. So I like to just have some sort of kind of conversation with them beforehand, before anything gets started, understanding a person's intentions, their fears, their desires, what they want, and try to break that down, even if what they want is against what's healthiest for them, right? I still just want to know, just be honest, right? What do you want? Even if that's the worst possible thing for you, because we have to meet ourselves where we're at. So gathering information like that, a first session, ultimately, the majority of it is cognitive, communication, just talking to one another. I like to understand a client's, spiritual background, if any. The people in their lives, who they associate with. Environment is big, because we have a lot of patterns of association in that way. Lifestyle, life conditions, and things like this. And so in a session, that first session, very much like you were saying earlier, is a lot of relaxation and getting them comfortable with this new agreement that they're entering into, because they're choosing this for themselves, right? They want some sort of change, or they want something. It's been suggested that to them that they come see a hypnotist. So we kind of just nestle into that agreement first, and then next sessions really dive into the healing aspect of it. But I like to see the unconscious mind as a map maker, right? Creating these borders and lines to understand, okay, associating this continent, these types of people, I see this, right? Creating these borders and lines neurologically. But the conscious mind is that person putting a push pin in one of those countries and saying, I live here. But we're trying to kind of bridge that gap. We're the same people. We play both roles, but we don't always see it that way. We can always kind of change where we live, what we call reality. What is it that I believe? Because at the core, that's what almost every challenge is. It's just some sort of belief, which then creates a limitation. And we're trying to heal that and soothe that. And it's not so much trying to fight against that limit or that block, because that doesn't do anything but create more friction. But we're trying to kind of understand that the perspective of that limitation, the perspective of that blockage, and see if it feels comfortable opening up just a little bit, degree by degree. And then by the end of a few sessions, there's more of a transformative shift in how a person might be seeing the world, or seeing themselves, or identifying with certain things.
So when that client comes back and it's time for a hypnotherapy session, I'm steering you towards the gory details.
Yeah.
When they come back and it's time for hypnotherapy, do you go through a protocol of relaxation exercises that include breathing, or certain visualizations that you instruct people to do every time? Is it different for every person, or is there a rough outline of how that works, and can you kind of describe what that process is?
Yeah, so it is different for every person in terms of the words that are shared, right? Because that's dependent on that person's story. But for hypnosis, there's a lot of relaxation, there's a lot of breath work. But as the practitioner, I'm always considering there always has to be one element that stays the same through every session, and then everything else can change. So there has to be one concentrated focus within that session that we're always connecting to, because again, we're creating a new pattern, and so that whatever's staying the same has to be associated with that client's goal, their desire, and that somehow finds its way to repeat time and time and time again, where every other visualization or what have you can change around them, or they go about their daily lives, new feedback from their week, setbacks or progress, what have you. So things will change, but there's always going to be something that stays the same. And that is because we want to feel comfortable. We want to go back home. So that new association becomes their new belief system, their new home. that they're trying to invoke anyways, right? So as far as the details of a session, a lot of breath work, definitely a lot of visualization, calming of the mind, and really just connecting with the client, because it's much more challenging when there's this hierarchy. Oh, I'm the hypnotist, or I'm the therapist, or I'm right, and then the patient or the client, right? It's trying to level, because no one really wants to feel comfortable to open up when they don't feel leveled with. So there's a lot of that. Intuition. I do pride myself with being a fairly intuitive person, so that does come more naturally to me. But I do work personally to expand that, help myself and others, and so that's a lot of it too.
What kind of work do you do to expand your own intuitive senses or intuitive capabilities?
Well, I have certain practices that I perform daily, mixture of breath work and visualization, a lot of self-hypnotic techniques, honestly, just creating new patterns for anchored growth and healing, and to whatever degree, because we can sit here and say, oh, I'm good, there's nothing else I need to work on personally or what have you, but there's always usually going to be some reoccurring theme from our past. So I try to train my mind to associate with progress and overcome limitation. And so that has helped me with my clients as well. I notice I'm able to learn more from them as well and pick up on certain things. And I've definitely expanded a lot as a practitioner over the years. So,
do you have family who are curious about what you do? And have you worked with family before with what you've learned?
I've never worked directly with family in that way. They definitely all know what I do and think it's unique.
No one's asked to come in and have a session, or it hasn't gotten to. No one's asked to be hypnotized or undergo mesmeric healing. I love that term. I've never seen that before. I saw that on your website. But mesmeric healing, being mesmerized.
Right. Well, I'll start with the first question.
Yeah,
I guess
thank
my
you.
father.
Yeah, thanks.
My father did recently kind of ask me help him out with a little bit of smoking. So I was like, all right, we'll see. If
Lifetime smoker?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see if that ends up being a thing. But
that's part of your toolkit, though, right? You do work with people for smoking cessation.
I do.
Yeah.
I do, absolutely. And that's been very rewarding as well. But yes, with the mesmeric healing, I mean, Franz Mesmer coined the term mesmerism, and it was based upon animal magnetism, this idea that there's, an etheric fluid between person to person that we can pick up on and manipulate in certain ways. And there's been various degrees of this concept throughout the ages. He's not the first one, but coined that term, mesmerism. And with certain trainings that I've done, Rick Collingwood is a pretty big, well-known mesmerist based in Australia, I believe he's in. But I did some studies with him virtually as well, and learning mesmerism through the eyes, the portal of the eyes, has been interesting. But I will say it's a very intense process, so I have noticed a lot of kind of quick results, but also it's a two-way street, right? So a practitioner, like I was mentioning earlier, there's some sort of level playing ground. So to preserve and to protect myself as well, I have noticed changing different techniques to kind of fit the mold of the client or what have you, or what I'm feeling is necessary. So I don't always use mesmerism, but sometimes I will, depending client to client. But it's a beautiful practice.
Expand on the idea of protecting yourself or keeping your energy or spirit or whatever safe in the work that you do, which is very intimate and connected, right? You're entering into, just like a psychedelic medicine guide would be entering into someone else's consciousness that has been altered, or the unconscious is playing larger role, and I do want to ask you a little bit more about unconscious also. But what is safety for yourself entail? What does that really mean when working with clients? Because even a psychotherapist who's seeing 4 or 5 clients a day, I mean, that's an incredible barrage. And especially during the pandemic, we heard about burnout, provider burnout, and people just kind of running out of that. I don't know how healthcare providers do it, like ER nurses or these caseworkers that are working with people who are in addiction. Golly, what an incredible expenditure of energy and taking on other people's vibes too, right? So what does that process look like for you, keeping yourself safe or maintaining a safety? I just kind of want to know about your skills in that.
Yeah, that's a big one, especially working in treatment. But I will say I have definitely experienced a burnout. That has been a thing. It's in terms of protecting myself, it's more about just balancing my time and how much I dedicate to any one thing.
Yeah.
So just the simple process of understanding, okay, if you're working 5 days a week, which I was in treatment, seeing 6 to 7 clients a day, teaching 2 groups a day, right? That can be very overwhelming when the majority of your life is in the treatment center. And then you start to assess, okay, is work life the life? Is that life what, through association, I study this all the time, I'm putting the pieces together that, okay, I'm associating more with this vicinity, this environment, this center than perhaps my hobbies, my personal hobbies or things like this. So, so just reducing my hours was a start to protecting myself. But also in terms of just like home mental hygiene, stuff like that, just being aware of who I'm around, being aware of my personal sensitivities, and not overlooking that, right? If something comes up, I'm feeling a little nervous or anxious, maybe there's a reason for that, and trying to assess those things. And I usually just like to dig deep with anything that I'm experiencing and noticing if that's beneficial to me or not. And I'll just protect myself from there, case by case.
Yeah. Talk to me about unconscious. You've used that term a bit, and let's just touch on your understanding of unconscious and the relationship between conscious and unconscious being, and where the unconscious is activated or engaged in a hypnotherapy session.
Yeah, it's active all the time. It's kind of this autopilot situation that we're always in, and it's just always taking in information and differentiating if that information is ultimately something that it wants to utilize to create a pattern. But unconsciously, when I'm working with a client or in a session, it's not as much entering into that unconscious state. It's not as much entering into a state of suggestibility, but just expanding the client's awareness that it's always there. And when is it working in your favor? And when are we unconsciously allowing or accepting a loop or a pattern that we don't want? Then we have to ask ourselves consciously, is that the push pin we want to place? Is this the reality we want to be in? Usually, if we're wanting some change, the answer is no. But then the next step is trying to figure out, okay, well, what are the steps to get there? That's not where I want to be. I want to be somewhere else. How do I do that? And usually we make it more complicated than it needs to be, because consciously we're trying to put the pieces together. For instance, if someone wants a job, right? They're, I need a job. I need money. I need this, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, perhaps all that's needed is just a connection, right? You meet one person, they already have the job, the position's already available. Going back to that topic I was mentioning earlier of you're never starting from a 0 point. You don't have to build this world, right? The world's here. The elements are here. The fundamentals are here. We just kind of have to tap into one level of it and sync with it. So if all that's needed is going to the grocery store and meeting someone that has a position open that likes your energy when you're picking grapes at the grocery store, boom, instant manifestation. We call it magic because it's so quick. If we tap into that tune, that frequency, but it's really just noticing the shifts. But if we're bombarded with a lot of stimulation all the time, we're always around social circles, picking up people's conversations and their ideas on things and their opinions. We care about this, and then we lose touch with what we really believe or what we really think about something. We don't have a strong sense of awareness. This is who I am. This is what I want. This is the direction I'm leading. Then anyone, including myself, we get clouded. And that is what leads us to not be able to notice those subtle shifts. And if it were to occur, we would overlook it. So a lot of times the answers that we're looking for, they've been coming in, or at least they've been within our vicinity, but we're not able to notice it. And so it's kind of a clearing. Working with the unconscious is also just a clearing of what we think we always want and understanding what is that's actually occurring, tapping into that and just altering it just by a degree or by a hair and noticing the ripple effect of that experience.
How long do your clients see you for? Do some people see you like this is my psychic or this is my stylist, or are you like a life partner in this work for some clients that can retain your services, or do you see some people once and that's it? Or does insurance pay for this for people too? Is that something that, how accessible is hypnotherapy? And what are the durations of the types of relationships that you wind up forging?
Yeah, it's usually out of pocket, unless it's integrated into some sort of program or, for instance, the treatment center that I'm at, more of a holistic approach. But there is, the accessibility it's present if they want it to be, right? But ultimately, it's a very, very unique process. I love working with my clients, and usually I'll tell them, ranging between 4 to 6 sessions, we can create a lot of change. We can really get the seeds planted for a lot of things. The time thereafter, it's just all growing and unfolding, and that's a lot on them. That's a lot on the individual person to continue practicing the things that we share in session, and but usually within 4 to 6 sessions, there will be a significant shift, and oftentimes even before that. But that's usually the time frame I'll give my clients. But yes, personality-wise, or just as kind of like a mental checkup, clients will just kind of come back randomly. Hey, I want a session. I want to do this. Want to get in touch with this. So that can be a thing too.
Do you or any of your peers, have you been tracking the conversation around medicinal psychedelics or psychedelics for therapeutic use or psychedelic usage in particular communities? Has that been a point of interest for you at all in terms of just seeing what's out there in the news, what's out there in the zeitgeist in terms of wellness, in terms of institutional or industrial medicine, the sociological implications, the geographical implications? Have you been tracking any of this landscape at all?
Not to the degree that I would feel super confident speaking on at the moment, but I've seen it in a general sense, and it excites me. It does excite me. I think anytime we can make a new connection, build a new rapport with a substance that might have been demonized or what have you, I think that's a good thing. And using it in a therapeutic setting definitely could benefit a lot of people. I've seen various talks of ibogaine or ketamine or all these things, and it seems phenomenal. So I would definitely want to dive into more research about all that's been going on with it.
Yeah, it feels so familiar in this conversation, and as I hoped and thought and believed it would. It's kind of about finding language, about finding the code to work with this incredible matrix that is our psyche and our being, right? I'm always particularly heartened when I hear about the work that's being done for addiction recovery and in breaking addictive cycles. Like you mentioned, ibogaine in particular has been found recently to have incredible promise for breaking the most brutal addictive cycles and physiological, psychological addiction. What do you think? I think we live in a pretty addiction-friendly world. In fact, I think that it's, on a consumerist level, on a marketing level, I think that I think that it's being employed now as a technique for monetary benefit more than ever. I feel like most of what we engage with has an addictive component to it, and the language around addiction has changed. The way we want to binge things, or the way you're going to be addicted to it, right? So, what do you, in a nutshell, like, what do you think it is about the phenomenon of addiction? It goes beyond something that you like to use or something that you like to engage, but it's working on a different level, right? It's getting at you on a deeper and more subversive level. Talk to me about your experiences with addiction.
Yeah, it's been one of the most profound experiences for me as a practitioner, because working with the clients that I do, I mean, at the core, it's often, a lot of times, these core wounds of trauma, abandonment, neglect, abuse, the list goes on. So really, almost every client I'm working with, it's not the substance. 9 times out of 10, it's not. The substance isn't that feeling that they're reaching for. There's an absence that wasn't present when they were younger. There's too much of something, an excess of an energy, right, when they were younger, that they need to kind of learn to reduce within their mind, or associating with those things. So if there's excess or if there's absence, then that's going to just already get the mind going unconsciously. All right, there's a pattern here. Everything's in excess, everything in excess. Okay, there's an absence. All right, well, I'm lesser than, I'm not worthy. No, I need something to cope. No, and so the list goes on. So at least when I'm working with my clients, the psychotherapists have a different approach, and that's beautiful, and it really works harmoniously together. But I'm really just focusing on the emotional bonds that we start to form from an early age up into present day. And it's profound. Working with addiction has been rewarding in the sense of giving clients a chance to reconnect with a new version of themselves, or a reclaimed version of themselves that they had lost touch with. It warms my heart thinking about some of the experiences I've had with my clients, but there's definitely hope. It's out there. But also, truly, you have to want it, right? You can't force someone to heal if they don't want to. In treatment especially, right, there's a wide range of clients that are there at their own will, and clients that maybe it's a court mandate or what have you. So there's different ranges of, I want to be here, I want to do this, I want this change, I want to treat my addiction. So that's a level of it too. Their will involved with it.
Is your intuitive sense that human beings in general are basically innately driven towards more loving and considerate acts, or do you feel like that's primarily a product of coaching under some kind of doctrine or guidance? Do you feel like basically, I'm just curious about your intuition and the work you've done, the time you've spent examining your own psyche and being in with so many others, but do you feel like what motivates the species is a more benevolent tone, or is it a more volatile, erratic, easily destructive that we have to coach to being something that can keep a functional society together? Because when you look at the world and you look at history and you see so much atrocity and so much craziness and so much destruction within the family, within countries, what the heck is going on? Like, what's at the core? What do you think is at the core of people in terms of that prime moving motivational energy?
I like this question. Well, yeah, genuinely, I think at the core there is, as cliche as it might sound, it genuinely is a loving component. I do think, but to term it as benevolent, I think it's just growth, it's expansion. But it's this whole separation consciousness thing, right? We're individuals living our own lives, our own jobs, building our own careers, our own relationships, our own houses. It's all our singular. Like, we want to be independent from the grand design. And because we function that way, just there's ego naturally involved. I mean, that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying that it's present. And so with that, though, there's more possibility, I think, for friction, because you have one man having different goals and different directions that they're trying to reach in their lives, or so they think. So there might be times where that doesn't align, the ideas don't align, and so that immediate kind of clash of philosophy maybe can lead to someone getting a bad taste in their mouth about someone's personality, right? That can lead to pain manifesting or suffering, or right. So I personally just instinctually, I don't think we're inherently bad. I really don't think that. I don't think there's a dark force underneath us, but I think we need to override this separation consciousness thing, and the more we unify and understand that, yeah, we have different goals in a very, reality sense, but when it comes to the energy behind those goals, we just want to be loved. We just want connection. We just want to feel safe. We just want to remember that feeling from when we were younger. Those things are universal, but the specifics of it are individualized. So that's the illusion. And I think that illusion leads to negative experiences and society and clash and wars and all these things. But that energy, I do also believe, rests in this living entity we call Earth, right? Because certain areas that, if a group of people believe a similar thing, that philosophy soaks in to the land, I believe, So I do think there are certain areas in the world where you enter and you're like, oh, it feels different here.
Yeah.
That's a subtle sense. We can't override that. That's real. Just because you can't touch it doesn't mean it's not real. And the imagination is proof to that. You can literally will yourself to feel warmer, to feel cooler. And these are mental strategies that, yes, we use in hypnosis, but we can use anytime. So if you will yourself to think this world is evil, it's evil. It is. And you will continue to grow upon that pattern loop because you deem it to be progressive in some way, or, thought-provoking in some way, producing a feeling. But yeah, I do think at the core, though, we have a solid, loving tendency. I think it could be disrupted very easily. But that's part of our work here, I think, to reclaim our sense of unity. And relationships are a big thing. That's why love, I think, leads a lot of people to find their path again. I've multiple accounts of many of my clients, a relationship led them into finding their faith or coming to therapy or something like this. Love has a really unique power behind it, and that's because it's unity. It's in the nature of the game. So that's illuminating, I think, for many people.
Yeah, it's always one of the takeaways from people it's often one of the takeaways from people who have psychedelic experiences, ceremonial psychedelic, therapeutic psychedelic experiences, a mushroom trip or usually a mushroom trip, but the interconnectedness, the acknowledgement of the interconnectedness and how everything's interrelated. And I love the way you put that, even beyond whether it's love or unlove, it's growth. And that's the nature of everything, the constant growth. And I associate that as an aspirational creative person as the creative force, as opposed to the disintegrative force. I saw a lecture recently with these psychedelic artists, Allison and Alex Gray. And
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with their work.
yeah. I had cursory familiarity, but not, wasn't a scholar. But what a wonderful, loving, accessible presentation they gave. And one of the main takeaways for me was she shared that her understanding of the nature of reality, the nature of everything, reality, from her psychedelic experiences, was that it could be parsed out into three components: unity, chaos, and language. I think I'm remembering this correctly, but language, symbol, so the way through which everything is expressed, the unity of everything, the way everything is held together, and the state that it's always looking to achieve and build upon. And chaos is not necessarily human on human violence or animal on animal violence, but the constant process of getting to the unity, right? It resonated for me. And I feel like, your comments about growth are in line with that too, building towards not even necessarily what's benevolent, but just kind of what is.
Yeah, building upon anything, right?
Yeah.
Just any belief we have. That's exactly what I think it is. We're just trying to prove ourselves right. We want to be right. Doesn't matter what we're right on, person to person, but we want to be right, and we want to grow within that understanding. Hey, look at me and this, and I'm connected to all these things because I'm, believing in a trajectory that expands upon itself, and that is empowering for us, no matter if the belief is good or bad. So yeah, I really do align with that.
I want to thank you so much for taking a chance and coming on this podcast with me and sharing your wealth of knowledge. Any last thoughts for anyone who's listening or watching this and had ever considered whether or not hypnotherapy could be right for them or for a loved one, or is curious? Any parting thoughts on just kind of what you might say to somebody with curiosity or how it might benefit?
Well, let your curiosity lead you. That's exciting. The child is forever curious, so that's tapping into that childlike mind. But no, I think hypnosis is something we enter all the time, every day, whether we realize it or not. Right before sleep, we're in that space where it's possible to kind of access these deeper realms of the mind. So it's happening whether you know it or not. If you're curious about it, it's always available to you. So I love it. I love what I do.
What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? All Is Mind Hypnotherapy is the website?
Yeah, allismindhypnotherapy.com. And yeah, that's probably the best way.
Yeah, it's all there.
It's all there.
Cheyenne, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.